We're going to spend time unpacking the term multisensory and the role it plays in multisensory structured language education. When we talk about multisensory structured language education, we're talking about a term that's commonly endorsed and practiced by teachers of students with a wide range of learning difficulties. Multisensory strategies require our learners to use two or more sensory modalities at the same time to take in or express information. Why do we want to use multisensory structured language instruction? Old models of the brain had it much more compartmentalized, with specific regions specializing in specific modalities. Now we know that the brain operates much more holistically, and it's actually multisensory in nature. Students with dyslexia exhibit weaknesses in underlying skills which involve speech sound, and print processing, and in building the brain pathways that connect speech with print. These brain pathways used for reading and spelling must develop to connect many brain areas and must transmit information with sufficient speed and accuracy. So we use multisensory instruction to actually help us to build those pathways. When we think about multisensory structured literacy instruction, we can think about all of these different things that are taught. When looking at this list, we see that it doesn't differ a whole lot from any good linguistic focused instruction for learning how to read. However, sometimes we think about multisensory structured instruction focusing only on those first two bullets, phonological and phonemic awareness and sound symbol association. What we want to remember is that we can use multisensory instruction for those later components on the continuum as well. So we can use it to think about how to instruct patterns, syllable types, morphology, syntax, and semantics. How is it taught? Multisensory instruction is taught simultaneously, and it's taught through visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and tactile modalities. It's taught in a systematic and cumulative way, which means that there is a progression from the more simple task to the more complex. It's taught systematically and explicitly. So not only does systematic mean that there's a continuum, it also means that we have a very systematic approach to the way that we deliver instruction, and that instruction includes plenty of time for teacher modeling, guided practice before students are asked to do something independently. It is also diagnostic in that teachers are always aware of what they want the target to be, and they're constantly watching and adjusting instruction based on what they're observing the students doing. It includes synthetic and analytical phonics approaches, which we will talk a little bit more about later. And it's comprehensive and inclusive, so it can be used for all components of reading instruction. We will take some time to unpack each of these 6 bullets and look at them a little bit more closely. Multisensory teaching links speaking, listening, reading, and writing by purposefully and consistently linking these modalities of visual, the language we see and perceive, auditory, the language we hear and turn into speech, kinesthetic, the language we represent with movement, and tactile, the language we can touch and or manipulate. So when we think about that tactile part, we want to think about the connection between reading and writing. Research has shown that multisensory neurons may be specifically designed and activated by using things such as pens and pencils. So when we think about the reciprocity of reading and writing, this is where that research supports that. The other big component of multisensory instruction is that we think about how we can use 2 or more of these modalities simultaneously. So this probably looks familiar to many of you. The use of Elkonin or sound boxes, where the students segment the sounds and then move the chips according to the sounds that they hear. When you think about that with a layer of multisensory awareness, what what you're actually doing is activating the visual, auditory, and tactile modalities. When we add actual graphemes to that instruction, and now students are linking letters to the sounds that they represent, again, we are activating visual, auditory, and tactile modalities. So thinking about the systematic and cumulative bullet, multisensory language instruction requires that the organization of material follows the logical order of language. So there is a sequence that requires us to begin with the easiest and most basic elements and progress methodically to more difficult material. Each step must be based on those already learned, and concepts taught must be systematically reviewed to strengthen memory. So this differs from an embedded approach. We know that there's a sequence that makes sense and that sequence is cumulative.